And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. We've been talking with Bob Whitley and Whitney Butcher from the Whitley Law Firm about motorcycle accidents. And the question I have for both of you is that it seems that there might be a misperception that in these types of accident cases that the motorcycle is typically, or the motorcyclist is typically at fault.
So a lot of folks, Drew, have a preconceived notion about motorcyclists, that they drive too fast, that they drive recklessly, and that's something that you have to face whenever you represent someone injured in a motorcycle wreck. For example, I was telling someone about a motorcycle case earlier, and the immediate thing they thought of was, oh yeah, you see these cars going down the highway, weaving in and out of traffic. And so
the motorcycles weaving in and out.
That's
yeah.
right. And so that's a notion you have to combat before you even start talking about your case, is what people think sort of out in the universe and out in the world about motorcyclists. That's absolutely not true in every case.
How does that play into your representation of a motorcycle client?
Well, when you're representing a client injured in a motorcycle wreck, you are having to go to trial, right? That's what you're gearing up towards. So you're ultimately dealing with 12 jurors' biases. And so if there are folks out there who think that motorcyclists speed or drive recklessly, you're having to combat that head on. Another thing that happens is speed. The defense or the insurance company may try to just go ahead and argue that your client was speeding, even if there's not a lot of evidence to support it, because of those notions that people have.
How does that work, Bob? How do these experts and these reconstruction engineers and these people, how do they determine how fast the vehicle or a motorcycle is traveling? How does that work?
I'm going to tell you in just a minute, but I want to kind of pick up on what Whitney said. I think we find just the opposite of that perception in the real world.
Yeah. In the real world, okay.
Yeah. I have found the motorcyclists that I've represented over the years, both those that are veteran motorcyclists or those that just do it recreationally, they're usually the safest drivers. And statistics show, I think it's over 90% of motorcycle and automobile collisions occur when the automobile pulls in front of the motorcycle in some fashion.
Okay.
Whether that's pulling out from a stop sign, whether it's turning left in front of an approaching motorcycle, whatever. And I even read an article recently about why, kind of psychologically oriented, of why we have such difficulty seeing motorcycles. Because I do believe we do. I don't think people deliberately turn in front of motorcycles, but they don't see them and appreciate their speed and their vulnerability as much as they do an automobile.
Yeah.
Drew, in the recent case we were talking about earlier, the expert that the insurance company hired relied on this 33-page document that was titled Conservation of Linear Momentum and Conservation of Rotational Momentum in analyzing and determining the speed of the motorcycle in a crash.
Okay.
Now, it's real complicated,
Yeah.
but it's kind of based on Newton's principle, and that is if two vehicles, let's say they weigh the same and they hit, they're going to both have pretty much the same energy, and you can go and measure the distance after impact,
right?
Then try to then determine and calculate the speed from impact to resting, and then that allows you to compute and analyze the pre-impact speed of both vehicles.
Okay.
Now, I don't think the audience is going to be doing any of those formulas. They're awfully complicated. Well, this case we had, the insurance expert used both of those methods and came out with this 80-mile-an-hour speed for our vehicle as it approached the wreck. And then he braked for about 80 feet, and then the impact speed he calculated at 68. And he relied on that article. And we hired two experts who completely disagreed with their expert, but I couldn't understand why it was wrong. And I just struggled with it. And I mean, my experts were really good, and what they say turned out to be probably exactly what happened. For example, they weren't certain that Chase had laid the motorcycle, or that the motorcycle was down.
Okay.
One thing we've learned in dealing with motorcycle crashes, most of the time a cyclist doesn't choose to lay it down. Sometimes they do.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes when you're braking particularly if you're using rear wheel braking, you're going to lose control just like a bicycle, and you're going to go down involuntarily.
Okay.
And then you might still slide into a vehicle.
Okay.
The goal would be to avoid. So I just woke up one night, I had worked those formulas. I said, you know, how did he come up with this wrong conclusion? And I read the article over and over, and it was written by this expert, accident reconstructions in New Hampshire,
Okay.
named Wade Bartlett.
Okay.
So I said, you know what, I'm going to call Wade. So I called him, and to make a long story short, he ends up coming down to Raleigh. We hire him as our third expert,
Wow.
and he completely analyzed the wreck. And for the first time in the whole process of the case, Whitney and I understood exactly what happened in the wreck. And we videotaped him explaining that. And I mean, for example, Drew, there was a mark on the road that the other expert had identified and had just concluded the mark was made by the motorcycle after the collision. So he puts the collision over here in front of the mark. Wrong. That mark was made by the motorcycle as it was sliding down just before making impact with the vehicle.
Okay.
And see, what that does is it really moves that vehicle way around so that it didn't really get popped and moved all the distance that the expert was saying.
Okay.
It was only moved a few feet. Then that affects the speed, the approach speed, the impact speed, all of those things. So
interesting.
And he was such a good teacher. He brought replicas of the size of the motorcycle and the size of the other vehicle involved,
that's cool.
and was able to point out and show us what parts of the motorcycle made those exact scratches on the roadway.
The kickstand. A motorcycle has a kickstand on the left side, just like a bicycle.
Yeah.
And that is going to hit the ground first, if you think about it.
Okay.
There was another piece at the back of the motorcycle that, what do you call that? The rim, the second scratch.
That's right. Yeah, the back.
The back wheel rim, or
so he was showing what those scratches, what part of the motorcycle made those scratches.
Okay.
And it was absurd to think they were made after impact.
obviously. Okay.
So,
fascinating.
Anyway, so I was talking earlier about how we get one of the neat things about what we do is we really get into to learn a subject, and I learned a lot about reconstruction and conservation of linear momentum and rotational momentum in motorcycle. One of the things that complicates it, Drew, and it was the thrust of the article, there's such a weight difference. I gave the example of two vehicles weighing the same, but we had a 6-to-1 ratio. That big pickup truck weighed six times
more than the
cycle and the cyclist.
Okay.
And you got to get their weights, and you got to consider, did they have boots on or flip-flops? Well, they wouldn't wear flip-flops with a motorcycle.
Hopefully not.
And in our case, you had a knapsack. So all of that goes into that, and it's just when you're in it, there's nothing any more exciting, particularly when you can prove exactly what happened and you prove that your client was not one little bit at fault.
Because that's a point we've kind of danced around, but I don't know that we've said it. Our client didn't remember. He had a head injury and couldn't remember what happened in the wreck. So we had no firsthand account to go by, from what he was saying. So we had to actually go back and recreate based on the physical evidence at the scene, the damage to the vehicles, how it happened.
When we come back, we're going to talk about what insurance companies do to try to deny benefits in these cases. More on Attorneys on Call.